ask Kurt's favorite author, I would not say William S. Burroughs or Patrick Suskind. Instead, I would suggest Samuel Beckett. I don't have anything solid to base that on, other than he often seems to be reading his books or mentioning him in interviews. And you can see my video, the Kurt Cobain reading list, for some of his quotes on Beckett. I put Waiting for Godot on my Kurt book list because it's the book I already owned. I never heard him speak specifically of that particular one, though, anywhere. I read the book, and it's actually a play. I read it and I loved it, and I wasn't expecting to love it, but I really connected with it. But I had no idea how I was going to make a video to do with Kurt and the book. But then one day I noticed something about the lyrics to Smells Like Teen Spirit that really reminded me of Waiting for Godot, and now I wish all those interviewers had asked him a lot more questions about Samuel Beckett, because I have a lot of questions. At the time of Beckett's death in December 1989, the LA Times said of Beckett's characters were stunted, beaten men and women doomed to successive miseries and compelled to crawl onward, not by any spark of optimism or courage, but rather by the simple fact that there is no alternative. I think characters like this also appealed to Kurt. You can see these same sorts of people in songs like Paper Cuts, Sappy, Polly, and Scentless Apprentice. After hearing of Beckett's death, British playwright Harold Pinter said, "He was a man of great imagination. He was, in a sense, a quiet leader. He was in the forefront of modern literature. He was totally original and a man of great courage, not only in himself, but in his work. His work knew no bounds, really. He didn't accept limitation." And I think this idea of no limitations would have been interesting to Kurt and something he might have admired. And I think Kurt would have liked this about Beckett as a person. As the LA Times mentioned, those works and a sparse collection of other novels, plays, and radio dramas eventually won him a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1969. Typically disdaining any trace of celebrity, he ignored the ceremonies and sent a friend to collect his $72,000 check. As for Godot, it is a play that leaves room for interpretation. A lot of room. Beckett refused to say what the play was about. However, he once said, "I take no sides about that." And another time he said, "I'm not interested in any system. I can't see any trace of any system anywhere." It's a lot like Kurt would never explain his lyrics and wanted his listeners to look at them as a puzzle to work out on their own. Beckett was the same about his various works. With something like Godot, I'd almost say it was something you already know on some level and something you feel. The funny thing is, while I was researching, I read from people trying to explain the Teen Spirit lyrics that they are not something you can explain, they are something you feel. I agree, so instead of looking at the song line by line, we'll look at the ideas behind it, exploring the possible connections to Waiting for Godot and the movie Over the Edge, and look at some lyrics from some of Kurt's other songs, such as Paper Cuts. I see Teen Spirit as an absurdist song, like Waiting for Godot is an absurdist play. I'll quickly define absurdism for you. Absurdism is a philosophical theory that the universe is irrational and meaningless. It states that trying to find meaning leads people into contradiction and conflict with the world. It's a discrepancy or a collision between two things. Or, as Kurt said of the meaning behind Smells Like Teen Spirit, it's a song made up of contradictory ideas. What is Waiting for Godot about? If I were to try to summarize it in 4 lines, I might say, "And I forget just why I taste. Oh yeah, I guess it makes me smile. I found it hard. It's hard to find. Oh well, whatever, never mind." It sounds like dialogue right out of the play, the very essence poetically put. I would also say the play is about 2 guys named Vladimir and Estragon, unable to leave the vicinity of a scrawny tree in a barren wasteland because they are waiting for a man named Godot, who never shows up. Often forgetting what they are doing, why they are doing it, and if they enjoy something or feel anything. Over and over they choose to go on the same way and not think about it. So let's begin with my take on the lyrics, "A mulatto, an albino, a mosquito, my libido." And whether Kurt actually read the play Waiting for Godot and got inspiration from it or not doesn't really matter to me, because in my view we're going to get to the same place by looking at them next to each other. Near the beginning of the play, the 2 characters are talking. Estragon begins to tell an obviously dirty joke, but doesn't get to the punchline. The partial joke is that an Englishman, having drunk a little more than usual, goes to a brothel. The bawd asks him if he wants a fair one, a dark one, a red-haired one. At this point, Vladimir yells, "Stop it!" and exits. He can't face the punchline or the truth it will reveal. The thing I noticed is that you have an albino, a fair one, a mulatto, a dark one, a mosquito, a red one, and my libido, the person in the joke who is making the choice and is being driven by his libido. Those lines look meaningless, they look absurd, and maybe that's as far as it goes, or maybe not. In my view, the joke isn't just sitting there partially told in the middle of the song with nothing to anchor it to the rest of the lyrics. Kurt stops there, and it got me to wonder why Vladimir wants Estragon to stop. Humor is used to face reality, to more safely look at the truth, to come to terms with what you don't want to admit. You look at it in the daylight, or you deny who you are. A denial. Vladimir is saying stop, so he doesn't have to face that. He's going to stay where it's safe with the lights off. It's a denial, a denial, a denial. This situation where a character has to look directly into the face of a cruel or painful realization can also be seen in some of the lyrics to Kurt's other songs, such as Sappy or Paper Cuts. I think it's an idea that he was really interested in. It's been written that the title Smells Like Teen Spirit comes from some graffiti Kathleen Hanna wrote on Kurt's bedroom wall. He thought this was her being complimentary towards him. He thought it meant he was a revolutionary, a radical, a person with a rebellious spirit. The reality is it was a joke. Teen Spirit was a brand of deodorant his girlfriend Toby Vale wore. When he found this out, it was probably like an absurdist moment when the lights come on. You are left to confront your grand view of yourself for the reality of the situation. It's like the dirty joke in Godot, and Kurt is the punchline. Or the line in Teen Spirit, it's less dangerous with the lights out. When you're in the dark about something, you aren't seeing yourself as you are, or reality as it truly is. It's less dangerous for your ego. This is like the allegory of Plato's cave that I discussed in my video on the song Drain You. If you don't know anything about that story, there's a link in the description where you can quickly hear about it. But basically, so you can follow along, it's that you think the world is one way. You're only able to see things in a particular light, and then you have the rug pulled out from under you, and the truth is revealed. There's a bigger picture you couldn't comprehend until now. I see this as a big theme of Kurt's work. For now, I think we can understand the less dangerous world of the dark by looking at the character Pazzo from Waiting for Godot and the mother in the song Paper Cuts. Pazzo is a character in Waiting for Godot. He is the master of a servant named Lucky, who he leads on a rope. He was a person of authority who thought he had the whole picture. He's like a negative mother figure, tied to Lucky by a rope like an umbilical cord. We could say he was in the twilight level of the cave. He believes he has all the answers and is like one of those people casting the shadows the prisoners see on the wall. He sees this in his position over Lucky, giving him a sense of power and importance. But instead, there is an even greater reality outside his cave of perception. And when he stepped into that light, the master went blind, unable to face the truth of the bigger reality. We see this later when he says, "They give birth astride a grave, a light gleams an instant, and then it is night once more." Coming to a realization is a sort of birth process. Letting go of false views of reality is a sort of death that leads to the birth of a greater realization. Sometimes we can't fully process new knowledge and slip back into our old, comfortable patterns and habits like we never learned anything. Or maybe it was something we never wanted to become conscious of because it required too much of us, so we forget it and close our eyes to it. Pazzo plunges into the blindness of the cave like the prisoner who has returned and can't make sense of the shapes he sees on the wall. The darkness did not burst upon him. Instead, his inability to look at the light full on causes him to cling to the darkness. Now, in a state of willful blindness, he is no longer in authority. When we first meet him, he's cracking a whip at Lucky and leading him by a rope tied around his neck. He feeds him leftover chicken bones and calls him an animal. He was like the abusive mother of Paper Cuts, locking her child in a dark room and getting off on the control and pain she wields, only to be faced with her inferiority when the police arrive to uncover her disgusting behavior and bring it to light for all to see, including herself. There are many ways to be in the cave where you think you're safe, unable to see the bigger picture. In the dialogue of Plato's Cave, Glaucon says to Socrates about the story of the prisoners seeing their shadows on the wall of the cave, "You have shown me a strange image, and they are strange prisoners." And Socrates says in reply that the prisoners are like ourselves. Kurt tells us same story in Paper Cuts about the boy locked in a dark room who doesn't have a good view of the outside world. "Black windows of paint, I scratch with my nails. I see others just like me. Why do they not try to escape? They bring out the older ones, they point at my way, they come with their flashing lights and take my family away." So, a flash of light pushes the character into a bigger reality. The lights of a police car, a flash of realization. It may seem like the world of daylight is a dangerous reality, but to stay in the dark would be just as risky. The boy in Paper Cuts, the people outside his window, Socrates, the prisoners, Vladimir, Estragon, Pazzo, teenagers in high school, you, and me, were all in the same cave in one way or another. In an interview in Seattle, Washington in 1993, Kurt says, "I kind of envy people at times who are blissfully happy. And a lot of those people aren't bothered by the complications of knowledge and everything else that life has to offer. I know a lot of people who are simpletons. They are very simple and they can enjoy their lives and be happy and secure by just watching sports on television and having a beer every once in a while. And I've always felt too complicated. So I kind of envy those people. And I'm not saying I'm smarter than most people. It's just that I'm too sensitive. I wish sometimes I could just enjoy the simple things in life, and forget about everything else." I think he is expressing how it's more complicated to be an aware thinking person as opposed to a distracted person who doesn't take the time for thinking. It's not a superior way to be. Life would be easier if you didn't even realize that there were these two ways to be. He's saying it's less dangerous with the lights out. It's less complicated for a person when they can't see and aren't conscious of the situation. You can hear him expressing this with frustration in the song Class of '86 on Fecal Matter. All the high school kids are clones, stuck in this vapid and shallow habit of being. They behave the way all their friends do without really thinking. It can also be an easy and more protective way to exist because you don't have to face ostracization from your friend group if you don't think for yourself. It's less dangerous with the lights out. This line is reminiscent of one of the most quoted and thematically significant lines in the play, Waiting for Godot. Vladimir asks what they should do, and Estragon replies, "Don't let's do anything. It's safer." In the play, the line is expressing how Vladimir and Estragon are excusing their inability to act by saying that to do nothing is safer than to do something. If you behave like you didn't know you were playing, there's nothing to lose. We choose by not choosing. Doing nothing is actually just as unsafe as doing something. The truth is still there. Who you are is still there. Reality is outside the mouth of the cave. Willful blindness is a losing move. We could view the line, "It's fun to lose and to pretend," in connection to this. If you hide your light and play dumb to fit in, it may be a lot of fun, but you're losing by doing that. It's fun to lose and to pretend could also be viewed as an absurdist position. The absurdist response when facing reality is to rebel. And this is a song about teen rebellion. The absurdist author Camus, who Beckett admired, wrote, "Your very existence is an act of rebellion, and in order to exist, you must rebel." This is maybe better seen in Paper Cuts when Kurt says, "My whole existence is for your amusement, and that is why I'm here with you." The kid keeps finding himself in the same situation. He wants to be loved, but instead finds people getting off on his pain. His act of rebellion is to pretend he can win. He sees the value in himself and rises above the others to a state of nirvana. As Camus says, "Become so very free that your whole existence is an act of rebellion." Despite everyone dehumanizing him, the Paper Cuts boy faces the blinding light of reality and gains freedom. He gains nirvana. Like Pazzo was to the mom in Paper Cuts, his slave Lucky is to the Paper Cuts boy. Pazzo says Lucky doesn't want to be comfortable. He can't quite understand why. He suggests Lucky's entire existence is to please him. Lucky's thinking is not understood. It's something the others don't want to hear. In his monologue speech, he is thinking relentlessly about things the others don't want to face. And even though he isn't making sense, he would continue thinking if the others hadn't stopped him. The others close their eyes and ears to it. But Lucky is fully aware he's a slave. He doesn't need to distract himself with comfort. Beckett did say of Lucky that he had no expectations, and that's why he's lucky. In this way, Lucky is the freest person in the play. His eyes are open, and he sees the illusory nature of the self. He transcends his suffering and attains peace with his life just by going on. The following line in Smells Like Teen Spirit, "Here we are now, entertain us," was supposedly something Kurt said when entering parties. I'd guess it was a play on what teachers say to kids when they're acting up or bored. My teachers would say, "I'm not here to entertain you, you're here to learn." The expectation was that kids don't want to think, they are seen as only wanting to play and goof off. So I think this is the perfect sarcastic thing for teen revolutionaries to say. Critic Brett O. States said of Waiting for Godot, "Convicts and children love it. Why would both these groups love it? I think it's because both groups know how it feels to wait. Both groups know how to survive waiting. Both groups are offered more opportunities for self-contemplation. Smells Like Teen Spirit is a song about teen revolution. As Kurt once said, it's a fun idea, but it'd never work." Kurt also often spoke of the movie Over the Edge. It is a movie about teen revolution. My description of Over the Edge is that it is a movie about a community that doesn't like itself but plasters smiley faces all over its trash cans. It's a community where property values are more important than people. Kurt at first wanted the music video for Smells Like Teen Spirit to be like that movie. I'd suggest that if you watched Over the Edge, you can find a lot of parallels between it and Waiting for Godot. The kids in Over the Edge are waiting for something, anything to happen in their dull, planned community. Their community is in the middle of nowhere, far from town. It is surrounded by scrubby, dusty fields and abandoned building projects. There is nothing to occupy their time with, no green parks or biking or hiking trails. A bowling alley and roller rink were promised. However, after waiting for several years, the billboard advertising it as coming soon was taken down. As one father says to his son, there's no money in it. The only thing the community has granted these teens is a shabby, rusty, portable rec center in the middle of a barren dirt lot. This is like their version of the tree in Waiting for Godot. Vladimir and Estragon have only the tree to connect them to the physical world. These kids only have the rec center, and like Vladimir and Estragon, they return to it day after day, waiting for something, anything to happen. It is their comfort and their oasis, even though it's not much. As I previously mentioned, sometimes teachers think kids only want to goof off. It seems like all the teachers in Over the Edge think this way. A science teacher is trying to get the kids to focus on a biology lesson. The scene cuts to him talking about an ecosystem of plants on a table. He's heard saying, the fern needs lots of water, yet they can live together in the same environment. The teacher isn't seeing the bigger reality. Their community is like an ecosystem. These kids are like the ferns. They need a lot of attention at this point in their lives. They need to grow strong and become part of the community too. But the teacher's lights are off, just like the parents, and he can't see this. The main character, Carl, sees his best friend shot and killed by a cop. All his parents say about this is maybe Carl will understand now. They are not troubled by Carl losing his friend or witnessing what happened. They are only concerned about controlling Carl's behavior. And to Carl they say, "We just want to keep you safe. It's less dangerous with the lights out. Stop questioning authority." Remember, in Waiting for Godot, the characters said it's safer to do nothing. The parents literally want their kids to do nothing. They are not taking into consideration who they are or what they need. You can see this idea in Waiting for Godot as well, when Vladimir tells the messenger boy to make sure he tells Godot he has seen them. This is all he desperately wants Godot to know, that he has been seen, that he is real, that he is a person. Many teenagers feel this way about adults. They aren't really seeing them for the unique person they are, and they aren't hearing them. Have you ever noticed that the music of the pre-chorus of Smells Like Teen Spirit, where Kurt just repeats the word hello over and over, sounds like a clock ticking? Time slowly moving on as you wait, like a kid in school watching the clock till the bell rings. Hello, hello is like someone trying to catch your attention and be heard. Like Vladimir and Estragon wanting Godot to know they're there, or the kids in Over the Edge wanting their parents and teachers to hear them and to recognize their needs. The kids in Over the Edge say things like, "What else do I have to do?" when asked by a friend to hang out. Like Vladimir and Estragon would say, "What's to be done?" There appears to be no choices in either of these stories except the choice to continue. Oh well, whatever, never mind. For Vladimir and Estragon, the thing to do is hang out by the tree. Without the tree, they wouldn't know where they were. Without the tree, they would have no choice but to face the reality of their situation. Who they are and what they are doing are thoughts they avoid because they might find themselves like people pulled from Plato's cave in the bright sunlight of reality. What if one morning Vladimir and Estragon see their tree has been chopped down during the night? Would they rage? Would they revolt when faced with only themselves? The kids in Over the Edge go to the rec center one afternoon to find it locked up. It seems the adults of New Granada think their perfect community has a youth problem. The adults believe the gatherings at the rec center are the root of the problem. They believe the only solution is to close it down. By doing so, they've chopped the tree down, the only symbol of hope the kids had. They've turned the lights on. The kids have nothing to distract them from the truth of their aimless existence now. The kids riot. Things are spiraling out of control in New Granada. The adults call an emergency meeting at the school one evening. Teachers hand out flyers to the kids. One tells them the meeting is to discuss the problems about you people. All the blame for this situation is pinned on them, and they don't even get to discuss their problems with the adults. They are treated like they're stupid and contagious. The kids' response is to lock the parents and teachers in the school auditorium during the meeting, and then trash the school. Things get out of control. Someone brings a gun, and cars are set on fire. It's kind of like load up on guns and bring your friends. It's fun to lose and to pretend. They know they can't win, but this is their act of rebellion. The adults can't see the teenagers for who they are. They aren't adults yet, but they also aren't children anymore. The kids see themselves as bored and self-assured. The adults see them as delinquents. They treat them like little children. Their sarcastic response from the kids might be something like, "Oh no, I know a dirty word." It reminds me of my favorite scene in Over the Edge. While the kids are trashing the school, two girls get on the intercom and mock the things the parents say to them. It also makes me think of the guitar part that comes right after "A mosquito, my libido." It sounds like a kid sticking out their tongue and saying, "Nah." The reality the adults can't seem to face is that these children and their problems are a reflection of themselves, and the kids can't face the reality that maybe they aren't so different from their parents as they'd like to believe. Throughout the movie, the song Surrender by Cheap Trick plays. If the kids and adults surrendered to their reality, they might move beyond it. As an individual, you have to come to terms with the things you turn the lights out to. Come to terms with what you look away from. Acknowledge those things. This is an act of rebellion, and this is the absurdist response to the blinding face of reality. In Milk It, Kurt sings, "Look on the bright side, suicide. Lost eyesight, I'm on your side." This line also brings to my mind Waiting for Godot. Vladimir and Estragon talk about hanging themselves from the tree. It's approached comically, like the Milk It lyrics. They always have that. Like Pazzo has lost his eyesight, he doesn't have to take the responsibility of actually seeing reality. It's easier. The absurdist author Jean-Paul Sartre says, "The absurd man will not commit suicide. He wants to live, without relinquishing any of his certainty, without a future, without hope, without illusions, and without resignation either. He stares at death with a passionate attention, and this fascination liberates him." Likewise, author Camus stated that your very existence is an act of rebellion, and, in order to exist, man must rebel. He thought a person ceasing to exist would not allow them to rebel and change the status quo. To an absurdist, the rebellion is to keep going even when you know the outcome. It's fun to lose and to pretend. Act as if Godot is going to show up and acknowledge you. Pretend that teens can overthrow the status quo of the high school and their society. At the end of Over the Edge, the kids lost. Not much changed other than a few of the parents were seeing things a little differently. Comparing that to Waiting for Godot, it's like when the tree sprouted just a few leaves, like 3 or 4. Nothing much changed. Vladimir and Estragon are still waiting. The kids of New Granada are prisoners sent away from the town's site to be disciplined and locked up for a while. And we're still left with a denial at the end of Smells Like Teen Spirit.